Welcome to a video for students in the composition program at Wichita State University. This video will go over some of the types of articles you might encounter in your research process. At this point in your career as a student, you've probably had teachers tell you that scholarly, peer-reviewed articles are the most credible sources for research papers. You've probably also used a library database to find these kinds of articles. However, you may not know that many library databases provide access to other types of sources. If you're searching through the library website, the results will probably include scholarly peer-reviewed articles. However, depending on the databases you're searching, they may also include non-scholarly sources, including magazine articles, newspaper articles, reference articles, and other types of sources that don't fit into these categories. And depending on your topic and purpose, some of these non-scholarly sources might be a good fit for your project. Here are some reasons why they might be a good fit for you. First, non-scholarly articles are written for general readers like you. Scholarly articles are written for specialists who are already familiar with specialized terminology and concepts, which can make them challenging for non-specialists. Non-scholarly sources, on the other hand, are written for general readers and typically explain ideas in ways that most people can understand. Second, non-scholarly sources usually have a faster publication time than scholarly journals, which makes them a good choice for recent issues where the landscape is quickly changing. Due to the research and peer review process, it usually takes months for scholarly articles to move through the peer review process. If you want the most up-to-date information on a topic, you might need to consult non-scholarly articles. Finally, many non-scholarly articles are credible. It is true that scholarly peer-reviewed sources are the gold standard for credibility because they go through a rigorous peer-reviewed process. However, many non-scholarly sources also have high levels of credibility, though you, as a researcher, have to do a little more work to determine their credibility. Most of the sources you're going to find in databases will be articles, so let's quickly review what an article is. An article is a short piece, often between 1 and 20 pages. 20 pages may not sound short, but it is short compared to a book. Unlike books, articles are usually published in periodicals like newspaper, magazine, or journals, or on a website. This video is going to focus on articles published in periodicals because that's what will usually show up in library databases. A periodical is a publication released at regular intervals. It might be released daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or on some other schedule. Each edition usually contains multiple articles. This video is going to go over the 3 most common types of periodicals you'll find if you're using a library database: newspapers, magazines, and scholarly journals. If you're searching outside of a library database, such as doing a Google search, you will get other kinds of results as well. However, this video is going to focus on the sources you'll find in library databases. We'll start with newspapers. As you likely know, newspapers are divided into different sections with different focuses, like news, sports, opinion, and classifieds. The credibility of an article depends, in part, on what section it was published in. News articles are usually written by reporters who conducted primary research, such as interviews with witnesses or experts, and are supposed to present an unbiased account of events. They can help you establish the basic facts of an incident, such as who was involved and what happened and where it occurred, but they probably won't provide you with an in-depth analysis about a topic or issue. News articles are usually written from a neutral stance, and an editorial board usually works with the writer to verify information. As a result, news articles are usually considered credible. Editorials are written by the editorial staff and present the writer's personal opinions on a topic. The writers are supposed to support their opinion with evidence, but it is up to you as the reader and researcher to gauge whether their evidence is credible and convincing. Opinion articles, often called op-eds, are similar to editorials, except that they are written by guest writers. They present the writer's opinions on a topic and require you to evaluate the writer's argument and evidence that they present. Another familiar type of periodical is magazines. You see magazines like Time and People every time you purchase groceries. There are a wide range of magazines, and their credibility depends on their purpose, the level of research that the writers do, and the magazine's political and philosophical stance. For the purposes of this class, we'll divide magazines into three general categories: popular magazines, substantive magazines, and trade magazines. Popular magazines are written for a general audience and span a variety of topics, from celebrity gossip to food and travel and sports. Their articles are usually short with the goal of entertaining readers. Writers rarely cite their sources, and editors rarely verify that the information is accurate. As a result, popular magazines are usually not considered credible sources for a research project. Substantive magazines are also written for a general audience, but they are a step above popular magazines in credibility. These magazines usually cover topics in more depth than popular magazines, and the articles are written by journalists or specialists who do significant research on their topics. They probably won't have dedicated works cited or references pages, but the writers usually acknowledge their sources in the body of an article. For example, they might provide the name and title of experts that they interviewed, and they might provide publication information or a link to published sources they reference, so that readers can find and verify the information for themselves. The writer and editorial board usually work together to verify information, so these magazines are usually considered credible. Because these magazines are well researched and written for non-specialists, they are often useful sources for research projects. However, many substantive magazines are published by organizations or editorial boards with significant philosophical or political points of view, so you should always do lateral research to determine if they have known bias. If you learn that a magazine has known bias, you can still use articles published in it for your research paper, but you should balance them with additional sources that reflect other perspectives. Trade magazines are another kind of magazine that you might come across in your search results. Unlike the other magazines we've discussed, trade magazines are written for specialists within a specific field or industry, and they are often aligned with professional organizations. They are usually reviewed by professional editors who work with the writers to verify information, so they are usually considered credible. The last type of source you will probably encounter are scholarly journals, which are sometimes called academic journals. Scholarly journals are written for specialists in an area of study and are often only available through library universities. As mentioned earlier, articles published in scholarly journals are usually peer-reviewed. This means that they are rigorously evaluated by other experts in the field before they are published. The reviewers pay careful attention to authors' methodology to make sure it meets standards within the field. This process ensures that scholarly articles usually present accurate and authoritative information, which means that they are the gold standard for credibility. However, these articles can be very challenging for non-specialists to read and comprehend. To review, we have covered three different kinds of sources that you might come across in library database search results: newspaper articles, magazine articles, and scholarly journal articles. In a newspaper, news articles are usually written from a neutral stance and report the facts of an event or situation. As a result, they are usually considered credible. However, editorials and op-eds present personal opinions and arguments that require readers to evaluate the arguments and evidence for themselves. There are several different kinds of magazines, some more credible than others. Popular magazines focus on entertaining readers and are not usually considered credible. Substantive magazines explore topics in more depth and require writers to do research, so they are usually considered credible. However, some substantive magazines have known bias. Depending on your topic and purpose, you may want to consult other sources to ensure that you are getting a complete picture of the issues. Trade magazines are written for specialists in a specific field or discipline. They are not peer-reviewed, but they are usually considered credible. Scholarly peer-reviewed journals are the most credible sources. However, they are not written for general readers, and due to the lengthy peer review process, they may not provide the most recent up-to-date information about some topics. Ultimately, your research and choice of sources should be guided by your topic and your purpose. If you have questions, talk to a WSU librarian. They are always willing to help. You can talk to them in person at the library, or you can chat with one through the ABLA Library website. Simply go to the ABLA Library website and scroll down to find the Ask a Librarian icon. This page shows the sources consulted during the creation of this video. No AI was used to create this video.